This customer had an issue where now they had Chinese eyeballs accessing their application, and they were getting inconsistent performance to those applications, which of course, inconsistent performance makes it very difficult to profile and to optimize performance. And then you got pissed off people because their stuff doesn't work right, and yada, yada, yada. And we were going down the road of figuring out how to put infrastructure for them into China, what it was going to take, what was the regulatory overhead, what was it going to require for them, how were they established operations, how to get the application loaded and running, what was this all going to mean, how much was it going to cost. Business requirements and regulatory requirements aside, we got to a number that it was going to be at a minimum basis, just bare minimal, to get infrastructure turned up inside of China for them was $100,000 a month. They were spending about $2 million a month on AWS. So they're going to have to spend 5% of that to bring up dedicated infrastructure inside of China. But now you're looking at all of a sudden materializing $1 million plus a year in IT infrastructure, an IT budget, just out of nowhere, right? What your budgeting cycles are like. But most people, if you come to them, you say, hey, by the way, you got to spend you have to increase your IT budget by 5% tomorrow just because. That conversation never goes very well. As we were going down this path, fortunately, we had a really, really good relationship with this customer, made a proposal of doing a test. And doing a test in a manner that wasn't going to be all or nothing or all in, but massively asymmetric benefit and leverage benefit if it worked. And that we were dealing with nothing more than just inconsistent latency, variability, and saturation of the network going into China for their application to work. And that they didn't actually have to go into China. They just had to deal with alleviating that issue. And what we did to alleviate that issue was we contracted with the Chinese networks who all land on the west coast of the United States to interconnect and peer. And we took 10 gig circuits from those networks and we put them into a data center. And in that data center, we put proxy servers. And those proxy servers had one network connection that was facing the Chinese networks and one network connection that was facing a direct connect. And back then, the direct connects were not universal, so we had to use an intermediary network that could then backhaul from the West Coast into Ashburn, Virginia in order to interconnect with AWS. All of the ingress and egress traffic to and from China for this customer came in and out. So it went China network, proxy server, intermediate network, direct connect, AWS, and back and forth. Didn't solve a latency issue. I mean, you're still dealing with talking about going from like China around the globe to Virginia. I mean, it's a lot of network segment. It's a lot of distance. But what it did do was it alleviated the choke points on the network, created consistency and predictability of that network traffic, and it solved the problem. And instead of spending $1.2+ million a year to solve this problem, plus operational overhead to split their application, do everything else that would have been who knows what, an engineering distraction, what would have been who knows what, they spent less than $10,000 a month to put this proxy in place and solve the issue.